with the prayer for serenity. This is a prayer to St. Martin. So if you can read it, yeah, please read with me, but turn off your sound if you're on a Zoom student. Let's say it together. Most humble St. Martin, your burning charity embraced all, especially the sick, the afflicted, and those in need. We turn to you in our present difficulties, seeking intercession. Please ask God on our behalf for this special request. By imitating your submission to God's will, may we have peace in our hearts. You served others without seeking anything for yourself except closeness to our crucified Lord. May we too find intimacy with Jesus through care for the needy. O God, you invited Martin de Porres into your heavenly kingdom. Grant that through his merits and by his intercession, we may follow his example. Give us the courage to address the problems that we face and the tranquility of spirit to accept as your will what cannot be changed. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, in the spirit of power and love. Amen. I want to welcome everybody back. Marcia's coming in now. First, let me ask, are there any questions or comments about anything that we've covered? Well, I'll be asking questions of you, so there'll be plenty of this. But if anyone wants to ask a question now, please do so. And of course, during the session, anytime you want to ask a question, you could put your sound on and ask the question. We will ask you to keep the sound off, though, if you're not talking, because sometimes there's a lot of background noise, and that interferes with people's listening. Let me remind you again, if you want to make a donation for the course, you may do so online at the St. Martin Shrine website. Or if you want to send it, St. Martin Shrine and Institute, 190 Adams, Memphis, Tennessee. Oh. Okay, just a couple of questions that are kind of in the air. I sent you that question about triage, is what they call it, emergency situations. What are we to do? And if you read the paper, it said that two questions are essential. First, who is in the greatest need? And then who can be helped? Who can be most helped by care right away? We're talking about an emergency situation where the healthcare facility is flooded with needs. People come perhaps after an accident. Sally was just telling about a time when there was a bus accident near her work, and there are all kinds of people who were sick, and the nurses came and separated those, I suppose, very sick, very injured, needing some attention, and those with light injuries, so that they could be brought to the hospital in right order. The idea of the emergency situation is to take out those people who we are fairly sure cannot be helped. They're still living, but they for all appearances, they don't have much longer to live. And rather than concentrate our care on them, even though in a sense they're the ones the most need, we'll concentrate on those who are seriously sick or injured, and and give them the attention they need so that they could survive. And those people with lighter injuries, they would be the ones that would be treated last. This came up in the beginning of the COVID pandemic with ventilators, or if you will, respirators in New York. They weren't sure that they had enough ventilators for everyone who needed one. Now, I never heard of it becoming the situation where people who needed them were deprived, but there was a great concern. And then the question, how would they apportion those ventilators? I just mentioned what is usually done. The ones who have the normal is the way to do is people who can't be helped, who you're sure are going to die. You don't. You leave them, just give them some comfort care. Perhaps volunteers can take care of them. The ones who are needing and will die unless they get some care right away, those are the ones you give first attention to. But the question comes up, what if many people are in urgent need and there still are not enough resources? Then how are you going to judge? How are you going to choose the people to get the care? There's sometimes people talk, well, you want to take the youngest people first, or I don't know, maybe women first, or maybe the richest person first. Some people would probably suggest that, not that that's serious. And those criteria, none of those criteria seem to be adequate, because every person's life is precious. Every person has a right to continue living. Now, I say, and this was not something that I found from the books, perhaps some type of combination of these things, you put them into what they call now an algorithm, a formula, so you can evaluate the person and then give the people with who come out with the highest number the attention first. That I have some problems with that. And I know that in some cases, what they're doing is giving a lottery, that people pick a number, and if their number comes up, they get the first attention. That, of course, is not going to settle all of the questions, but that is what's done in cases I know of, say, an organ, a kidney, that you have a number of people needing a kidney, and they all seem to have an equal need, and so they are chosen by luck. It comes out. Very difficult question. Another question that came up is advanced directives. And we're going to talk about them at some length. I think it's the first slide that we have, the first directive that we'll be covering tonight. So I'll leave that discussion until then. Advanced directives are these wishes, the desire of the patient that she makes before she gets sick, so that if she becomes sick and unconscious, people will know what kind of treatment she wants. Okay, want to get on with the discussion. Here we are, our book that we're using as a text, this Ethical and Religious Directives for Catholic Healthcare, facilities. We have to remember that this is a working out of Catholic medical ethics that will be applied to institutions. I choose it because it was available online, because it covers all of the important questions, and because it is authoritative. This is a work of the bishops of the United States, who, of course, are in line with Rome. But it may not cover everything that a person would want to know for his or her decisions. Just a little reminder there. Okay, Directive 59. The free and informed judgment made by a competent adult patient concerning the use or withdrawal of life-sustaining procedures should always be respected and normally complied with, unless it is contrary to Catholic moral teaching. This is very important that we understand that the person, the patient, is the one who should make decisions for her or his welfare. Certainly, that person needs to be informed by his or her physician, and she might want to consult other people. But that is the person directly involved is the one that should make a choice. Now, of course, children, their parents have to make the choice for their children. And yet I believe you have a teenager, 16, 17 years old, you'd want to give them more decision-making authority. Now, this we call this autonomy. The person makes decisions for him or herself. But if the person requests a treatment or maybe a non-treatment that is immoral, well, the facility can't, the Catholic facility can't comply with that. If the person says, well, I want to be put to death if I ever lose the use of my legs and arms, the Catholic facility will have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do that for you. And I wanted to emphasize this, that the person has the autonomy to make decisions for him or herself, but morally, that person should make decisions in line with what is right and good, in line with ethic, with morality, or a proper ethics. If the person doesn't want to do it, you can't stop that person from seeking the treatment that he or she wants, even though it's wrong, but we shouldn't assist that person in doing something that is wrong. I include this second question. You didn't find in the notes that I sent you the other day because I didn't think of it then. But this is a real question. People ask, is it wrong to pray for the death, my own death, or the death of another person? And it really is a problem a question that many people have. They've asked me, and I think we have to make a distinction. We realize that life is a good. It's a very great good, but it isn't the greatest good. The greatest good, of course, is God. And life with God is a greater good than life here on earth. So when we pray for someone to die, we want to pray that that person would see God, that person would enjoy the greatest good. And then there would be nothing wrong with praying for the death of someone. If we pray for the death of someone that we don't like just because we don't like them, of course, that's a problem. But praying that someone has eternal life, and we can say especially someone who's been suffering for a long time, I don't see any difficulty, problem in that.
Father,
Are you?
this
Yep.
is Dave.
Yeah, David.
I've understood it to be most people's intention is to pray for a peaceful death.
Yeah.
Not so much a, direct killing to take him or her now, but to have a peaceful, unsuffering death,
Yeah.
if that's possible.
I
And
remember, go ahead.
yeah, I think that's in line with the latter part of, to be, you know, peaceful in heaven as well. And somebody that's more conscious, one pastor I had said that he doesn't pray for a cure per se. I mean, it can always happen. Miracles can happen even in the 21st century.
Sure. Right.
But he prays that his first priority is to pray that the person, not go into despair faith-wise, doesn't give up on God, and find some way to endure it, offer it up, so that they're not discouraged by the ordeal they're going through.
Good. I remember a person, David, this was right after I was ordained. I was assigned to a parish in Texas, and I visited this nursing home. And she wasn't Catholic, but she was a devout woman, and I talked with her, and she would ask me very earnestly. She was lonely. Her husband had died. She asked, is it wrong to pray that the Lord will take me? She did want to join her husband in eternal life, and I thought that that was fine, that she didn't have to worry about that. But they don't give you these answers in the seminary. They don't give you these questions. The questions are much more theoretical. But I think that's a valid question and something worth considering. Okay, I want to talk about these documents that we have that could help people know our wishes, desires, if we become unconscious and can't make a decision for ourselves when we are sick. The first such document is a living will. Now, we don't talk, at least I don't hear people talk as much about living wills now as, say, 20 or 30 years ago. Living wills would say what the person would want if that person comes to the end of her life. The big question is, or one of the biggest questions treated by living wills is, would they want CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation? This can, a person can have the ceasing of the heartbeat and all of a sudden be kind of shocked into life. But it's also a very traumatic experience. And so older people who would tend to say, I've lived a good life. I don't want them to be pounding on me just so that I may live a little while longer. Younger people, of course, that can look to 10, 20 more years of life, of normal life, they would probably want CPR, and I think that they would that it would be given to them if their wishes weren't known because of that. But anyway, the living will is one document that prescribes what the patient would want if he or she becomes unconscious, and it has especially to do with end of life questions, again, like CPR. The second document we have in mind here is called an advance directive, where a patient would look into the future, what possibly might happen, and would say what he wants to be done if he were in this situation or that situation or that situation. And of course, unconscious, that he couldn't make a decision himself. A lot of talk about these. The talk, though, I believe is subsiding because of difficulties that we have with the, that people have, real practical difficulties with the advance directives. One problem is things change. You make an advance directive this year, and you're not likely going to use it this year, and maybe 10 years in the future, and then things, the medical world may have changed. So what seemed to be a terminal illness 10 years ago might be something that can be cured today. But if you say, if you have in this state this, if you're in the state with this illness, you don't want to be treated anymore, you'd rather just die, well, you may be depriving yourself of good time with your family. Huh? So that's one problem. Another problem is sometimes people ask the medical personnel to do things that are unethical, and the doctors cannot do it. Now, whether they're following strictly a Catholic healthcare morality, or perhaps our looser moralities, some things that the doctors won't do because they find it unethical. So that's another problem. And then, then there's a quandary. They want something done that the doctors, the medical people don't do. So what do? You look for a doctor that would do it. Is one way out of it. But that creates a second problem. And then the question, and this is probably the determinative factor. You never can predict all of the circumstances that are involved in a medical situation. Things become very complicated in reality, that you can't imagine so many things happening, so that your decision that you make when you write the directive may be inadequate because you don't have enough information to make a good decision. So those are three problems. As far as I know, the advance directives are still accepted, but are not as, people are not as enthusiastic as they were 10, say 20, 30 years ago. In the 90s, the late 80s, people were thinking this will resolve all our problems. That time there were some very cases, high profile cases, people in comas for a long time, and the court had to decide, and so the profession was saying to give advance directives, and now I think they've stepped back from that position. Are we okay? Any questions? Okay. Oh, and then the third document that we have, which is very helpful, is what's called the durable power of attorney. You assign a person to make a decision for you if you are not able to make, not competent, whether maybe senility, maybe an accident and you're unconscious, or you're confused and the decision had to be made right away and you're not able to make it. So usually this is done, of course, by the next of kin, whether a spouse, a brother or a sister, but it probably is good to think about the person you think can make the best decision. That person is should want to talk to you and to understand how you see things, so that she can make what is called a substituted judgment. This is, she would do what you would do if you had the facts. At times, though, the situation is completely different from anything you imagine, and the person has to make a decision for you. And the normal criteria is the person would make the decision that's in your best interest. as the general public would consider your best interest. Of course, the doctors would have a lot to say about what's in your best interest. And then that person, the one with durable power of attorney, or as I say, the proxy, the next of kin would make that decision. This is important, I think. One reason that if we are the person with the power of attorney, we would want to talk to that person to have an understanding of what she would do in different situations. But it's also important to tell the person that you cannot make a decision for yourself or for another that is wrong, that is immoral, that is unethical. So say the person will tell you, if I ever become quadriplegic, just remove all life support. And you would say, I can't do that for you. I can't make that decision. You better find somebody else to do it if that's what you want. I promise I'll do the best I can to make the best decision for you, but I can't tell the medical team to do something that's wrong. We should realize that if we're ever in that position. And I hope, if when we do this, people will realize that we have their best interest in mind. We have what's best for them as we know it because of our education, especially our religious education. Is everybody with me? Any questions? How are we doing? Elizabeth, it's good to see you. Okay.
You too, Father Common.
Okay, thank you. Now, euthanasia. We'll read it as it is stated in this, if you will, handbook for hospitals and other medical facilities. Euthanasia is an action or omission, removing water and food, that of itself or by intention causes death in order to alleviate suffering. Euthanasia, is a word, eulogize, you say something good about person, means good, and then thana is death. So it's a good death, and it's kind of the thought of a good death being one, David said it before, a peaceful death, a relatively painless death. Catholic healthcare institutions may never condone or participate in euthanasia or assisted suicide. Assisted suicide is pretty much what it's called today. The doctor or the physician may not be the one to give you an injection, but prescribe the pills for you to take so that you may die in any way. So the church is definite about this. It is to God to take a life. We certainly want to help the person as much as possible, comfort the person, stay with the person, but never to take the person's life. And I want to repeat something that I said last week about compassion. Compassion literally means to suffer with. So people are compassionate. The three friends of Job who sat with Job as he was in misery, that was compassion, talked with him. Now, remember the story of Job, they didn't give all the good advice and they accused him of doing something wrong, but they meant well and they were there. That was compassion. But it's not compassion to take another's life. This is taking away their first right, the right to life itself. It also it creates different problems. It creates a problem in the common good. Old people start to feel like that they should die. because there is a kind of the word I want is the euthanasia movement is kind of creating a sense that after a certain age or with a certain degree of infirmity, the person shouldn't live anymore. So it's disturbing the common good in that way. Let's see.
Just a minute. I wanted to.
Go ahead, Roxy.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. What kind of hospitals do go along with euthanasia? Because it's not just Catholic hospitals. I mean, I don't know of any hospitals, certainly not at Regional 1, that would ever condone euthanasia or assisted suicide. So unless I'm unaware, if people want to have that done, I've heard that they, that doctor,
go to another state.
They go to another state. What state would that be?
Oh, now there's a number of states. I believe Washington, Oregon, California, I believe New York, District of Columbia, and there may be another one.
Father Kaufman, I think Vermont might be one of them because my brother lives there and he mentioned that.
Yeah. Did he mention seeing somebody who was in that condition or?
No, he actually said it for himself in case he got older. He would prefer for someone to take his life and do that and do euthanasia.
And you don't do that by advanced directive. It's you have to have it in most states. You have to have a terminal illness. You supposedly have to be examined that you're not depressed. And there's some safeguards. The medical profession has integrity. I'm sorry to see some of the 50 years ago, I suppose, or say 100 years ago, the idea of taking anyone's life, suicide would be unthinkable. And now but there's still great integrity in the medical community. They wouldn't want to take a life of someone that they know to be depressed. Most doctors. But anyway, that's one of the problems that that I've read about, that the people are supposed to get this examination that they are not depressed, that they are of good mind, and they want this. And yet it seems evidently the examinations are not that thorough. There's some question of those examinations for depression.
Father Carmen, I have a question, something I read in a book, and I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a woman, I think she's a journalist, and she wrote a book about the journey with her mother, the aging of her mother. But to make a long story short, her mother was elderly, but basically didn't have any, I don't know that she had any life-threatening health issues, but she had chronic health issues. And her mother was ready to die, and the mother decided she wanted to stop drinking any fluids. And she decided not to drink anything and die by not eating or drinking. Especially in the book, she said it was the fluids. They were in New York, but it was like the mother chose to do this. Is that assisted suicide or euthanasia? What is that if you choose, I just want to die, so I'm not going to.
The woman herself is taking her life in not a very easy way. But what we can't force people to keep on living. That there's something immoral about that as well. It's unfortunate, and of course, if it's our mother, we would want to say, Ma, please, for Amar's sake.
Well, she had to be helped because she got to a point where she was unconscious. So the medical establishment, I mean, some of the medical community wanted to go ahead and put her on an IV, but then she didn't want the IV. So, I mean, but once she got to a certain point, anyway, it was in New York, the state of New York. So for
Yeah.
what that's worth.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that's allowed or, I don't know.
I'm not sure, and I think that's a very good question. Would a doctor, maybe presuming that the person is very depressed, or to say there were some indications that the person was depressed, not able to make a decision, and then the decision would fall upon the daughter? I think that she would be within her rights to make a decision to, yes, to give the mother some intravenous on that. You know, as you described it, the woman was either unconscious or so depressed that she wasn't able to make a right judgment. And I think the
And
medical
the mother had tried to die in the other ways we talked about, like when she got pneumonia, she refused to take the antibiotics because she thought she would die of pneumonia, but she didn't. She survived the pneumonia without the antibiotics.
Yeah.
And then she was having trouble swallowing. And so that was why she was getting pneumonia, but she said, okay, fine. I'm just going to keep eating and drinking, you know, and risk the swallowing problem anyway. But it was interesting.
I wanted
Yeah.
to say, my father did the same thing. He was living with us, and he had cancer, and it got to the point where he just didn't want to eat anymore. And then we had a hospice nurse that would come, and then finally he just said he wanted to go to a place, and so there was in fact, it was on Walnut Grove Road nursing home, and he basically just refused to eat and refused to drink anything, and he just, when he did say something, he would say, I just don't want to be here anymore. I've lived a life, and then he would just be kind of like semi-comatose. But he did that, and the hospice nurse was off. She agreed to do this. I mean, this was in the regulations of not having to give any IV fluid or anything else. And so that's what my father did, and also Ted's brother-in-law did the same thing in New York. So I think that's all right to do.
It is permissible. We have to remember that as far as the sinfulness of something like this, there are these are very difficult situations to be in, probably causing a great deal of mental distress, and that the person's decision is not the person's decision is not a truly human decision. We certainly can pray for the person and hope that that he or she enters eternal life. Very difficult situations. So I just want to say not to despair of the person, because it is a very difficult position to be in.
So, Father, this is Leon. Can I
please.
throw another hypothetical?
Lee, I was going to say, good to have you.
Good to be here. Coincidentally, a couple of nights ago, I was having trouble sleeping, and I watched the 1959 movie that maybe a few of you are old enough to remember, On the Beach, with Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner. The premise of the movie was that we had been in a World War III nuclear situation where the planet was fouled with nuclear radiation, and it was traveling around the planet, and most of the planet was already dead except for Australia and the southern part of the Earth, mainly Australia. And the premise was that Gregory Peck had taken his submarine around the world and found that basically everybody was indeed dead from this horrible radiation that was going around and basically not burning people up, but just internally killing them,
Mhm.
and in a very wretched manner. So it focused around 3 or 4 individuals, including a young couple who had a 1-year-old baby. And the government made the decision to hand out pills that would, as painlessly as possible, end the lives of the remaining population of the planet. Now, it sounds far-fetched, and it probably is, but the ethical premise as I was watching the movie from a fresh lens of your course was, could number one, the government made the decision to distribute the pills, not mandating their usage, but basically as an act of mercy so that people would not have to die so wretchedly. And the wife did not want to do it until it got very apparent that was the end game. And the husband kissed his wife, and basically they took the pills, and that ended their lives. And that was kind of the end of the movie, basically. It ended a little more romantically, but that was basically, you knew everybody was going to die. So could, in a situation that absolute, where the planet was definitely, people were left where there was no real choice. They were going to die wretchedly, and to save the child and the young couple from a real painful death. At that point, would the church say mercy would be the higher value?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I feel certain about it that it would not recommend that either as a public policy or as a personal decision to use it.
Even if they knew absolutely no possibility of the people being able to live.
Yeah, it's a doomsday. That's a doomsday scenario, and that was the book first, and then the movie
Yes.
that created so much discussion.
Yep.
But it seems like to me that it would be it could not be considered by the church, and it. We hope that never, anything like that will never happen. But let me say something, and this I was preaching about last week a little bit about we have to work hard to eliminate nuclear weapons, because such a scenario is possible. I mean, that there would be mass death because of nuclear fallout, and there is certainly. There's certainly enough weapons now to obliterate life, human life on the earth. I don't think you would disagree with that last thing, Leo.
Totally agree. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally agree. It's just, it would seem to me, if that was truly the end game, that through nuclear annihilation, we were going to have a slow death for the remaining, well, for everybody that was exposed. They would go through a truly horrendous death with no chance of survival. I don't know. The question of where does the mercy value come in to override possibly the doctrine?
But
if you would permit me to try to answer that question, the mercy would be in trying to alleviate the suffering as much as possible, to stay there with one another in this situation, and of course, asking the Lord's mercy. Okay, let's get on. We're halfway through the class, and I don't think we're halfway through the slides. This is a continuation of the 60th.
This is important. I
Directed.
can't hear, I can barely hear anything. Barely. I don't know how to turn it up.
Okay, I don't think there's a way for us to turn it up. Can you turn up your computer? I guess not, huh?
Well, okay, let me go. I have to go off. It won't let me. I'll work on it. I'll go off and then put it on loud and then come back.
Don't stay away long. Okay. Dying patients who request euthanasia should receive loving care, psychological and spiritual support, and appropriate remedies for pain and other symptoms so that they can live with dignity until the time of natural death. This is what we would try to do. This is what we try to do in these situations where people feel desperate. Give them accompaniment. Sometimes it's hard, you know. It's not like every person who is in this situation is a very nice, loving person and just experiences this hardship at the end of their life. Sometimes, and I would imagine as often as not, they're difficult people. And perhaps they've drunk, so they've been constantly drunk their lives, and that's why they're suffering in this way. All kinds of these maladies, problems that people have. But we're called to accompany those people. When I say we're called, this is our Christian responsibility. When I was sick, you visited me. Jesus couldn't have been clearer. Okay, we'll go on to Directive 61. Patients should be kept as free of pain as possible so that they may die comfortably and with dignity, and in the place where they choose to die, wish to die. Since a person has the right to prepare for his or her death while fully conscious, he or she should not be deprived of consciousness without a compelling reason. Now it says without a compelling reason. Certainly a person in pain is a compelling reason. It doesn't have to be something extraordinary. Okay, pain is not always essential as hydration and nutrition. Let me give you the example from experience, at least my reading. A person, a devout person, says that she wants to experience the pain of Christ so that she may have a part in in Christ's redemption. Well, if the person wants to do that, that's something to be honored. That's something to be admired. So that we wouldn't say that the person is, what is the word? Self-destructive. That's not the word I want. But because she doesn't want pain relief. No, she has this love of Christ and she wants to suffer with Christ. And that's certainly legitimate. Hydration and nutrition, though, is ordinary health care and should be given, and the person shouldn't ask not to take it. Of course, if they refuse to take it, again, we don't force feed or people. Some may want to endure pain so that they may remain conscious to see friends. That's one reason. They don't want to take a lot. They don't want to fall asleep because their family is coming to visit, or their friends, and they have something important to say to their friends. They want to make a sincere confession. I know people are concerned about that. Some people are concerned about that. Before they die, they want to make a complete confession. Sometimes they say a general confession, and then the priest better be ready to stay there for an hour because they mean to go back through all their life. Fine. This is a priest should feel privileged to do that, although it takes time. Or as a way of suffering with Christ. And then we have that citation from Colossians 1:24. I want to make up with my suffering for what is lacking in Christ for the good of the church. That's a paraphrase, but it's pretty much what St. Paul says. Okay, questions? Carolina, nice to have you. we'll continue with 61. Medicines capable of alleviating or suppressing pain may be given to a dying person, even if this therapy may indirectly shorten the person's life, so long as the intent is not to hasten death. Patients experiencing suffering that cannot be alleviated should be helped to appreciate the Christian understanding of redemptive suffering. Morphine seems to be the drug of choice when people are dying. Evidently, it's very effective for taking away pain. Indeed, one of the problems is if they don't die, they become addicted. You know, that can happen. But anyway, it has as side effects a retarding of breathing and a slowing down of the heart, so that it can cause death. Now, of course, you want to give the person only enough morphine so the person doesn't die. But we have to be aware of that and not, you know, they keep asking for morphine to let them have. Sometimes they have their own ability to inject themselves with morphine, that they don't kill themselves or that they won't be given enough to kill themselves. Our purpose would be to alleviate suffering as much as possible. And then it is, okay, so I said that. Morphine has that side effect, but still there's no problem with giving morphine as long as the intention is to alleviate pain.
Father, may
Yes?
I interrupt just a minute?
Please,
This
Sally?
is done usually under hospice care, and I have been a hospice volunteer, and I have had family members who have been under hospice care. I cannot tell you the nurses and doctors who are involved in that part of medicine are the most caring, attentive, and most capable. So I just wanted to kind of put a word out there. Don't ever hesitate about hospice if you all are considering it. It is, I think, the most humane and loving sort of choice for end of life. I really do. Thank
Well,
you.
I think there's some consensus on that, what you're saying, that this has helped enormously in the last 50 years, the hospice movement, rather than keep fighting to keep people alive with machines and medicines that are we're fairly certain are futile. You let them die peacefully, and with rather than the machines, human people, their loved ones around them. This is a great
But
grace.
Father, morphine is the medication that's used most often in hospice. That's why I wanted to interject that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to undermine faith in morphine. Just to say that if we hear about it, you know, that it can cause the death. Yes, we recognize it, and there should be a limit to the amount of morphine given. So a person doesn't take enough, that definitely will die. You know, perhaps it will be unintentionally that the person's heart all of a sudden stops and they analyze it and it was the morphine. But if that wasn't the intention of the prescription, then we can't blame anyone. Okay. The determination of death should be made by the physician or competent medical authority in accordance with responsible and commonly accepted scientific criteria. And we're talking about the at the end, huh? how do we know that a person is dead? We remember from movies, the doctor comes in and takes a heart with his stethoscope and see if the heart is beating. That's the normal criteria. Or if there's any air coming into the chest, if there's any breathing, if there's any action of the lungs. Another way, it should be someone who knows what they're doing. You wouldn't want me to pronounce you dead, because I'm not, I don't, my ears are not trained, or my eyes are not used to seeing this. So someone who is capable of doing it is the one who proclaims a person dead. But it doesn't mean that, and this is interesting, I think, it doesn't mean that all life's activities will stop when the person stops breathing and the heart stops. There are different, we can say, vestigial actions that go on. And sometimes caskets are open 10, 20 years after the, I'm not quite sure, years after the person's died. Don't 10, 20, I'm not sure if it stays around that long. And they find, the fingernails, the large fingernails. So there was some life activity, but this is just residual. When the brain no longer functions, it can no longer act as the integrating organ to produce activity of human beings, whether it's talking, but in this case, the ability to heal, then the person is dead. And as a matter of fact, there is this, we've all heard it, a person is brain dead, brain death. What does that mean? That's a very important category these days. It used to be very controversial, especially in the church. But here, St. John Paul II made a pronouncement that he said, in all appearances, it is a legitimate way to pronounce a person dead, that there's no more brain activity. When that ceases, the person is dead, even though the heart and the lungs, by means of a machine, a respirator, ventilator, may still be, the lungs may still be breathing air, and there might be some heart throbbing, but there's no brain activity. That person can be pronounced dead. Now, this was important because, for one reason is that, if a person is on a ventilator, respirator, and he appears to be dead, but you're not sure, well, you don't want to take the ventilator away because it's necessary for him to continue breathing. And how do you know he is dead? Well, you look at these different symptoms from the brain, if there's a brain activity. More importantly, though, in this era where we're donating organs, the dead person, an organ is taken, say a kidney, or maybe a heart and lung combination, and donated to another person. If you have them on the ventilator, there's still blood circulating, and that those organs have a better chance of being successfully helpful to another person. But if you take the ventilator off, they deteriorate rapidly, and they may not be good. Let me say something just a little bit more about brain death. It's a series of tests that are given to the person. It's not done by a non-expert. You really have to know what you're doing. A number of tests can be given. It takes a long time. Sometimes I understand it takes hours to determine if someone is truly dead, this brain death. But it is an important because it helps in this organ transplant that has helped so many people. Okay, are we doing okay? Any questions? Okay. 63, Catholic healthcare institutions should encourage and provide the means whereby those who wish to do so may arrange for the donation of their organs and bodily tissue for ethically legitimate purposes so that they may be used for donation and research after death. Just to say, reiterate something that I believe everyone knows.
Oh,
Donating an organ is not only permissible, but the church promotes it as long as it is given from a person who is really dead. And you have to kill the person to get the organ. And or if the organ is not necessary and can be, the person can live a normal life without that organ. Of course, this is the question of kidneys. We have 2 kidneys. We can function perfectly well with one. As an act of love, we can give one of those kidneys to another person. Does someone have a question?
I wanted to tell you that Abbott said that it's a good thing.
Oh, sure.
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thanks, Sydney. Okay. Non-vital organs taken from a live donor should not be bought or sold. Now, this is a real problem. When I was in California, of course, it would happen there. But there was a parishioner at our church who went to China for a transplant, and obviously they bought an organ. Now, it was wrong for him to do that, and it was wrong for the person to donate, to sell a body part. Our bodies are, we see it as our bodies are given to us by God. They are to be cared for, and they shouldn't be put on the market. Okay. There is some agreement. I'm going to bring up an objection to that in a minute. Let me go right now. Such organs, this is a continuation. Such organs should not be removed. Such organs should not be removed until it has been medically determined that the patient has died. In order to prevent any conflict of interest, the physician who determines death should not be a member of the transplant team. I'm kind of surprised that they put that one in there, but I guess it's happened, and they want to make sure it doesn't happen again. The question that has been raised recently, and you can put your mind around this. It's a good thought experiment. A few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I read an article in the Atlantic magazine where 2 physicians were making the proposal that there be a category of dying people called imminent death, and organs can be taken from these people who are in this state of imminent death. Imminent death means death is proximate, but it isn't there yet. And the doctors explain the need is that often when these persons who are willing to donate organs, when they die, their body goes through so much deterioration that the organs are no longer capable of being transplanted, or they don't retrieve them fast enough after the person does die, and the organs deteriorate and they are no good. So these doctors, they're conscientious doctors. They're interested in life. I presume. Anyway, they said we should take these people who are in this state of about to die. Maybe terminal cancer. It's coming close. Maybe they have a week or two. Who knows? A month. And if they wish to give their organs, to donate their organs, that we can take those organs. These are vital organs, of course, heart or lung, so that it can be it is assured that those organs will be helpful to another person. What it amounts to is killing this dying person so that you can use his organs to save the life of another person. And the doctors, they did some research, and I imagine asked a lot of people. There are lots of people who would be willing to do it. People who are dying, who don't want to prolong their life. They have a chance of their life can do more good now by giving their organs. Their death can, probably they would say it like that, their death can do someone some real good. So there is no, there are people willing to do this. It's not far-fetched at all. But we would say no. Even though the people are the best intention, you still cannot kill someone even to save another life. That it would be wrong. It would, of course, be wrong for someone to have themselves killed for that reason. I say again, brain death is the criteria. There might be some cardiopulmonary activity with a ventilator. The brain is dead, and then you can take the life. I suspect that's what's often done. Are you with me? Questions about that? Can you questions? The imminent death. Some poor people, especially poor people who live alone, they may be victimized by such a situation, but that's not the reason to prohibit it. The reason to prohibit it is because it is not up to us to take a human life, other people's as well as our own. Okay, this is this final thing I have here. Is about the sale of blood. I'm sure Leo remembers as a kid people talking about selling blood. You can sell your blood at that time maybe for, I don't know, $100 a pint, and it was discontinued, the practice of selling your blood. This is, we're fairly used to going and donating blood at a blood. Well, 50, 70 years ago, people go to the blood center, sell their blood for a certain amount. It was the practice was discontinued, I think, in the 70s, 80s, because the blood that was marketed like that was usually problematic. I mean, it was suspected that these people who would sell their blood probably were living a very marginal life, and there would be something wrong with the blood. It just was, the blood was suspected, and doctors didn't want to use blood that was bought. Now the question is, according to a Wall Street Journal article just a couple of weeks ago, there isn't enough blood available. That the blood centers are lacking blood, and they got to do something to stimulate the blood giving. And so they proposed, and this is the reason why it's not, this is the younger generation, they're not too crazy about giving blood. It's the older people who give blood, gallons. They have 100 gallons, 200 gallons, giving it every month for years. But the younger people, it hasn't caught on, and now there's a kind of a blood shortage. So they propose, should we have blood, the purchase or the selling of blood, the buying and selling of blood again? Well, there's nothing, as far as I know, it could be made legal if it's not illegal now, if it is illegal now. But I'm talking about the morality. The church has said organs should not be bought and sold. Should blood or say skin tissue, could that be blood bought or sold? Now, I haven't read anything, and this is not in the directives, but I would imagine just by extension that you would have to say no, that this is a gift from God. We're permitted and maybe even encouraged. I would encourage people to donate blood, but to sell it, it does seem to be bartering something that is, can I say, sacred? It's something that is that for the good of all shouldn't be put on the market. Okay, now we're talking about the use of organs, and this is evidently has been a problem in the past. The use of tissue or organs from an infant may be permitted after death has been determined and with the informed consent of the parent or guardians. So these little babies are born, they don't have they're not going to live. Can we use their organs once they die? And the answer to that question is yes, if you have the parents' permission. One kind of baby that people look toward to receive organs from, to donate organs, are these babies who are anencephalic. I think I have a close pronunciation. These are babies that they often are born alive, but they don't have a long lifespan. They may live a few days, more likely just a few hours. The medical people, they like to present these babies to their parents so that there's a bond or a sense of love there. The parents can feel that this time of gestation did produce something precious. There's been a request that these babies who definitely are going to die, their brain is not developed that they could support life, whether their organs can be taken before they actually die again, because they're more vibrant, more likely to have successful transplants with those organs to babies who need it. This is an issue with these anencephalic babies. And of course, the church says, no, that you cannot kill a baby for the organs. Certainly, if the parents want it, as soon as the baby dies, pronounced dead, take the organs. But you can't take the organs before that. Okay. I think this is the last one, and this is one of the COVID ethical questions. Catholic healthcare institutions should not make use of human tissue obtained by direct abortions, even for research and therapeutic purposes. And the question that is prominent today, many pro-life groups are very interested in this question because, of course, they want to see an end of abortion and not measures that kind of glorify abortion or show the good that abortion does. I don't think it's right to call it a good, but that some people would. Anyway, can a medicine or vaccine that was made with material, or as they say, cell lines of an aborted fetus, be used by a moral person? Is this cooperation in evil? So we get a vaccine, we find that it was produced by tissue from an aborted baby. Can we use this to vaccinate? Now, what this directive is saying, a Catholic healthcare institution cannot dispense that type of drug. That would be too close cooperation. But could you, if it's what's available in the public health clinic, could a moral person go and be vaccinated? This is a very serious question, of course. Life or death. And actually, it's not the first time it's been raised. With other diseases, there has been a similar question raised. And it's interesting that this Vatican document in 2008, responding to a call for answers to this question, has instructed that if no other remedy is available, this is the only vaccine on the market, and it is necessary for the health. Of course, in these questions, vaccine is not only the health of the one of your children, but it's other children who may contract it from you. So they say, okay, yes, this cooperation is not formal cooperation. You didn't agree to abort the baby. It's material cooperation and not immediate material cooperation. Remember those distinctions that we make, but as we say, mediate, and even if say that remote mediate cooperation. And then the document says, it would be good for people who are in this situation to write their public health officials and say, why don't you get a vaccine that's been produced morally? So they want you to be a little proactive on that to get a moral solution. Okay, now in the question of COVID-19 vaccine, it's been a kind of a marathon. All of these great big companies are trying to produce a vaccine because there's billions of dollars of profit involved in it. And as a matter of fact, one of the most promising vaccines is produced by a company called Moderna, and it is not using it's not using cell lines from aborted fetuses, either in the production of the vaccine or in the testing of the vaccine. We have the cell lines, they're not organisms, they're not people, but they're living cells that come from the people, in this case, aborted fetuses. And sometimes you test the vaccine on the cell, you probably infect the cell first with the virus and then see if the vaccine injected into the cell will kill the virus. So there are a number of promising vaccines. Some of them are, we can say, produced morally. And even if it comes, that one is superior and it is from an aborted fetus, and it really does outshine ones by companies who haven't used any material from aborted fetuses, probably will be legitimate to use that if it's really better and it's the only thing you have. It's the only thing that good. Okay, now, oh. Okay, I want to get a few test cases. I may ask some of your indulgence. Of course, you can leave anytime you wish, but I want to go through two test cases and then give a brief summary. So it may take us 20 more minutes, but let's see. These are actual cases. These were taken from Mercy Hospital in St. Louis. Mark Winston, a 91-year-old man who was living independently at home with his wife prior to the accident. He was a restrained driver, his wife was the passenger, in a rollover motor vehicle accident. He suffered numerous fractures of ribs, sternum, and back. His wife's injuries were minor compared to his, and she has already been discharged to the rehab hospital. Mr. Winston's hospital stay became complicated by respiratory failure. He was intubated, placed on one of these breathing machines, ventilators, and placed on a ventilator. But several days later, he was successfully weaned. His limited mobility does not bode well for his pulmonary health, and the care team needs to know whether Mr. Winston would choose reintubation if it became necessary. While his decisional capacity waxes and wanes throughout the day, members of the healthcare team agree that there are times when he is lucid and able to participate in medical decisions. During a period of lucidity, Mr. Winston states that he does not want to be reintubated. In fact, he says that facing the extended rehabilitation that will be required if he survives, he would prefer his treatment goals shift to comfort. However, when his daughters arrive, they are convinced that he just needs encouragement, and he reluctantly agrees to continued aggressive treatment and the possibility of reintubation. So they kind of encourage him to say that, and he's waffling. Huh? At night, when he is alone and often in pain, he tells the nurses that he is finished and they should allow him to die. And so the nurses call the ethics department. So you can see these cases are complicated. Lots of things to consider to keep in mind when we are trying to determine what would be proportionate medical care and what would be disproportionate medical care. All of these facts have a role in making that decision. Okay, so a couple of questions we want to ask. Is it morally acceptable to honor Mr. Winston's decision not to be reintubated? Anybody want to offer an answer?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yes, if he said that. Now, what if Mr. Winston became unconscious? Would the medical team have to accept the judgment of Mr. Winston's daughters that he
No.
that they should?
No.
Well, they're the next of kin, so it would, yeah, that's presumed.
What
Okay,
if they
now
get in
someone say no.
writing?
I heard someone say no. Who wants to answer?
I said no,
Okay, Cindy, why not?
because he's already made his wishes known. They should honor his wishes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the one that's got to do rehab.
Perhaps.
Although
But-
just following your logic, I would say they would not be able to follow his wishes.
Who wouldn't be able to follow his wishes?
The medical care couldn't follow his, if it's a Catholic hospital and he's saying he does not want to be incubated again because of not wanting to go through the procedures following that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a right to do that.
What I would say, Leo, is if they could have Mr. Winston sign a document saying that he does not want to be reintubated. Of course, you know, it's just not one, you get it, and then that you get a witness. Then you could present it to the daughters. This this is your father's wishes, and this overrides your wishes because this was a direct, in this case, you can say a living will that he made. Without that document, I'm not sure if I would agree with Leo that you couldn't. You have to accept the daughter's their decision because they have they are speaking for their next of kin, for their father.
Yeah, he has to sign the DNR or else they're going to have to resuscitate him, right?
Well, we're not really. I mean, it's not the same thing as resuscitation. It's use of a
But
ventilator.
still,
You would want that person to sign it, and that's of course you were just kind of echoing what I say. Yeah, you want something in writing so that you can present it. Now I'm not sure if that is done, if that's part of a hospital procedure, but if this case is if it's like if I were there in this case, I would try to get something in writing, especially when you expect that the family is going to want something different.
Father,
Okay,
Father,
go
can I
ahead.
ask you one last question on that?
Please.
I may have skipped a beat on this and missed a step, but is he not basically saying, in not wanting to be re-incubated, that he is choosing not to go through the steps to rehab himself?
That's right. That's right.
But does he have a moral right to do that? Because effectively he's terminating his life.
He certainly does. This is disproportionate treatment. It's very difficult for him, and that's why I said all of those points would be taken into consideration. He's old. He's gone through it before. It's been difficult. He's tired. He doesn't want to do it anymore. I would say there's no question about it being extraordinary or disproportionate treatment.
Okay.
Is it necessary? I mean, does he have to stop treatment? No. If he wanted to live to 100 and he's going to do everything he can to do that, well, I would say more power to you. We'll try. We'll give it a try. Sometimes it comes down to this is very, very interesting to me. This was, again, I was a young priest in San Angelo, Texas, and the little girl, she had, I guess cancer. Yeah, 12 years old. It was so difficult, and the family was there. And I think I was called when she was dying, and the family didn't want to say to take her off the ventilator. They just couldn't say that. It was just too much. And I had said that, this is okay. She's dying. Don't worry. You're not doing anything wrong. And the doctors said that they were about to take her off because of the ventilator, because it could go on for a long time, and it was just not. It was not a good use of resources, and they tried everything. So anyway, finally they took her off. Well, I was kind of surprised that many years later, the family was very much grateful to me. I think mostly for being there, but also for telling them that it wasn't necessary, for alleviating their conscience that they could give their daughter up.
Father, whenever I don't know, I ask a priest.
Yeah, but you better. I'm not going to say it. Okay, I want to go on to Mrs. Newton, 84 years old with advanced dementia and a history of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and diabetes. Is transferred from the nursing home to the emergency department with mental status changes from an apparent UTI. And she's having mental problems because of this infection that she has. In the emergency department, Mrs. Newton meets criteria for sepsis. Now this is getting very serious, and is transferred to the ICU. Once in the ICU, her situation declines before any family can be reached and is intubated and placed on the ventilator. Her only remaining relative is a son who lives 4 hours away. He is finally contacted and indicated that the ICU did exactly the right thing for his mother. He directs that all available treatment continue to be provided to her. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Newton is now unresponsive, vent dependent, in renal failure, and suffering grade 4 decubitus, this is bed sores. Death is imminent in the near but undeterminable future. There is no advance directive. Her son continues to insist that everything be done. Now the time has come to consider tracheostomy, which is, a breathing tube, put in the throat. It's quite invasive, as they say, and a feeding tube, PEG tube. There is some concern by the ICU care team that a tracheostomy and PEG tube may not be an appropriate medical treatment for Mrs. Newton. Ethics is consultant about whether the tracheostomy and PEG tube should be placed per the son's request. Okay, so should Mrs. Newton have been intubated in the first place? Well,
Yes.
I think,
If
go
they
ahead,
didn't have
Roxy, tell me
paper-
why. Oh, Christina, why?
Sorry. I was saying yes, if they didn't have documented paperwork that she didn't want to be, yes, they needed to.
Yeah, it would seem there was good reason to do that, huh? Before the things just kind of fell apart. To be intubated is not necessarily disproportionate treatment. It sometimes is necessary to keep the person breathing so that these medicines can take their effect. So that was okay. Does the son's statement that everything be done mean that disproportionate treatments be given?
That's a tough one, but
Yeah. But sometimes people, these terms, I hope for you, they're not that technical anymore. But when we talk about proportionate, disproportionate, most people won't know what we're talking about. And when they say to do everything, it can be interpreted, I think, legitimately. I'm not saying by some type of verification, that that the priest mean all responsible medicines be given, all responsible treatments be given, but not necessarily to do everything possible to keep the person alive. And that's an interpretation. Of course, what we want to know, this son, doesn't he ever come and see his mother and to make a decision that is only 4 hours away, and he's making decisions like this over the telephone? You'd have a difficulty. Does the fact that the son is not on the scene make a difference in this case? Anybody want to answer that one?
I don't know.
I say yes, it makes a big difference. Yeah.
Sure. If he could see the condition of his mother and all of these things breaking, all of the systems breaking down, it's got to be important. Now, I'm not sure if doctors, if the nursing teams will take decisions made by next of kin in another place. Does the person have to be there? It would be good to know, but I can't provide that answer to that. But in this case, it would seem that he's giving a general directive, do what you can to save her, but he does not necessarily mean at all costs keep her alive. And I think that's the question here. Okay, we'll quickly go, please.
Maybe he's trying to assuage his guilt for, like you suggested, if he's only 4 hours away, maybe he's neglected his mom even more than recent years, and he's assuaging his guilt for doing that and sort of ahead of time and trying to make it up for, when she passes, he won't feel even more guilty.
Evidently, that's very common. I mean, that's common that people do that.
Let me interject also, if there's
the other person,
time.
but for themselves, although they're not aware of it.
Yeah. When Saint Pope John Paul II was in his dying days, it seemed like I remember a discussion by the commentators and the news observers and even some bishops or clerics. John Paul didn't want to have be hooked up to machines and extend his life. He wasn't withholding hydration or nutrition, but did he more or less choose not to continue with his being?
David, you're right. What evidently he did was pull out his intravenous tubes. I mean, he literally pulled them out of him. He didn't want them anymore. And he knew he was dying, and so how there was discomfort, how conscious he was of activity, I don't know. But
maybe
you're right.
the Vatican needs to change its policy, especially they got more history to stand on since Pope Benedict was the first pope to resign in 600 years, and they make a mandatory retirement age for bishops at 75. Of course, the Vatican can accept it or reject it, but maybe he hung on as long. Maybe he should have resigned, or they need to encourage popes to resign if they're not in full capacity to execute the duties. But maybe his minor sin was maybe loving his mission so much that maybe a little pride slipped in, and he thought that he had to finish his vision, and maybe a follower couldn't do it as strongly as he felt. So maybe and then if he also wanted to pull the tubes out, it would have been a dilemma for the church if you had a living pope but was not conscious to make decisions, and he couldn't resign if he went into a certain unconscious stage. What do you do when the church needs a decision maker, and how do you reconcile all that?
Right. It would be an extremely difficult question if he goes into a long-term coma or, say, a persistent vegetative state. I'm not going to answer that now. I would like to just give you, I think there's 14 points, and I'll quickly go through that. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. I thank you, everyone, for your patience and for your attendance these 4 weeks. Procreation of children should take place in the loving union of a man and a woman who are committed exclusively and permanently to one another for life and who will educate their children. This is why, this is second. In vitro fertilization is morally wrong because it violates the right to a child to be conceived by the loving physical union of his parents. Child has a right. It's kind of think about a child. Kind of funny to think about a child has this right to be born in a loving union, to be born by nature. But for good reason, the church says that, and this is its teaching. Surrogate motherhood violates the rights of the child to be carried and born by his or her mother. It also undermines the dignity of women to have children only by their own spouse. So they have the children only by they have that right, and they have the right to expect that the spouse doesn't have children by other women. However, the direct abortion, the taking of the life of an unborn child, is never permitted. However, the principle of double effect may allow therapies to be performed that will save the life of a pregnant woman, even if the unborn child is likely to die. Now, the therapies are performed on the mother, not on the child. We talked about the principle of double effect, and it sometimes allows the death of a child to save the mother's life, but not through the death of the child, just as the child dies as an unwanted side effect. Non-therapeutic experimentation on embryos or fetuses is never allowed, even with the consent of the parents. Therapeutic experimentation may be allowed for a proportionate reason with the consent of the parents. So again, protect the child, especially at this most vulnerable stage. Okay.
Very good.
No, I still have a few more, and I've been doing this consistently. I haven't done this. People need to know the truth about their physical conditions so that they may make the medical choices. Oh Lord, excuse me. So that they may make the medical choices in line with what they believe is best for them, and when it is the case, to prepare for death. So it's important that people are well informed about their disease. This idea of paternalist, you don't tell the patient is going to die, is not recommended neither in Catholic moral theology nor in the public in general professional ethics. A person must take proportionate, that is, ordinary means to preserve his or her life. In principle, a patient must be provided with ordinary medical and health care, including medically applied nutrition and hydration. It's a hard one, but we don't consider this medical care as it is general health care, and it should be provided, even if you have to do it by a medical procedure. Euthanasia, the taking of a human life by either commission or omission so that the person may be relieved of pain, is never permitted. Patients experience intense pain may be given medication to relieve the pain, even if the medication indirectly hastens death. Again, that morphine is powerful medicine, and it may hasten the death. But if that's not the intention, it still is permitted. Brain death, the cessation of brain activity, is a legitimate way to determine death and has been useful in allowing organ donation. And finally, organ donation may be made and is encouraged to save a sick recipient from death or ongoing difficulty of treatment, as long as the donor is either dead or may live normally without the donated organ.
Father, I thought
Yes.
I would give you one of my lungs.
Thank you for your attention and support. If you have any questions, if you want to continue the discussion anytime, you have my contact information. God bless you. And
I have one final question,
have a
Father.
very good night. It's been my privilege to
Thank you.
share
Appreciate
with
you.
you this,
Thank you,
this
Father.
information knowledge.
Thank you,
God bless.
Carmen.
Thank you, Father. It was very helpful,
Good, good. Glad you enjoyed it.
really.
Beth, Laura,
And the
thank you.
reason we were quieter tonight is the end here is saying we're pondering very serious things. And so
Right.
it was hard to be joyful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right, right. What is,
I wanna-
please.
I want
David?
to do lunch with you again in the near future. And one quick thing on the advanced directives, I have a clause in mind that directs either the person I gave the directive to, that the healthcare providers, if there's any ambiguity or even if there's not, to consult a priest. And then if you're in your attorney's office, you could always have a priest read the draft, and it can always be amended anyway. And if you're asked to be a person on behalf of somebody else, I had to ask my pastor one time, and and I had to tell the person I could not direct a feeding tube be removed. But I think at that time, the directive was you weren't required to have a feeding tube, but you once once the decision was made, you couldn't remove it. But I think that's been overwritten by the Pope's more recent directives. Is that the correct understanding?
Let's talk about it over lunch, and
Yeah, okay.
it'd be my treat though.
Father Manley, I want to say thank you, and I gotta,
The last time, I've shared with you the church's teaching. As far as the history of it goes, there's a particular history even here in Memphis that I believe you were made aware of. So I would like to talk about it a little bit at length, and we don't have that time now.
Sure.
God bless you all, and
Any
like
plan? Do you have a idea in mind on what the next course might unveil?
I'll be writing you for suggestions.
Oh, okay. I just thought you might have something already on the boards.
Ideas. but I
Night,
have all of them.
Father. Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
Have a good rest. Bye-bye.
Father, thank you for your ministry.
It was
God
nice
bless.
to meet
Thank you, James.
everybody.
Nice to see you. Bye now, Carolina.
Nice to meet you, Christina. Bye,
Yes.
Father. Christina,
Yes.
should I, don't I need my live picture to be there? Like,
Well,
I mean, I don't know why it's not. I don't know anything about it.
well, there's a button that says start video, and it has a little picture somewhere on your screen.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
bottom left.
Yes.
Okay, and if I click that, it's like, okay, oh, okay, all right, next time. I'll be seeing you.
All right. Bye. Good night.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.